Hello, this is OverlordBou, and we're back with another ship review, and today we'll be looking at the new German Tier 8 Premium Battleship, the Brandenburg. So, this is how the ship looks with its normal premium camo. It looks pretty nice, I do have to say. It looks like pretty much a super beefed up Scharnhorst, if you want to compare it to. Now with the German Eagle camo, this is how it looks. It does have the same camo as the new battleship cruiser line that's coming out in 10.11. It is currently in access and early access in 10.9. So let's talk about the build real quick. Also, this ship is for sale for 12,800 doubloons in the premium market, and it's pretty much a Turpez Bismarck hull with Odin guns, but we'll get into more details in a little bit. So the build is main armament with fire damage con, aiming systems, steering gears, and I'll go in a little bit later on why you want to use steering gears modification, concealment modification. The build is pretty much a standard battleship build, and we'll talk about later why, but you can also do a secondary build if you like, but it kind of has the same secondaries as the Turpes and the Bismarck, but it's a little bit more tanky. But the thing is, this ship does have only 58,000 health, so it's not able to tank as much as a Turpes or a Bismarck. That's why I'd recommend just a regular battleship build. So you want to do fire prevention, brisk adrenaline rush, basic survivability, fire prevention, concealment, and emergency repair. So with the build out of the way, oh, of course you do have the repair, 5 heals, the spotting. It does not have sonar. It is a Turpez hull, so it does get the torpedoes. You also get the ASW airstrike depth charges, which are pretty nice. But yep, so with the build out of the way and looking over the ship, let us get into our replay. So while the replay is going on, I am going to talk about the ship. So again, this ship does have 58,800 health with 32 millimeter bow and stern armor. It does have a 60 millimeter icebreaker bow on the top section, with 80 millimeter plates protecting the stern. And now this ship does have a 23% torpedo protection system, so it does protect against torpedoes about average. But with it having such a strong bow and aft, it's really it's really good at kind of being bow in or kind of showing your ass, because not much is going to be able to pen that. So with this ship, as you can see, it does have a large superstructure. It does make it kind of easy to hit for cruisers and DDs. It also has a poor HP pool with it only being 58,800. So that's why I kind of recommend you do a regular survivability build for the battleships. The ship does have a nice concealment of 12.7 when you build into it, which is nice for using brisk. This ship is very difficult to citadel with it having a turtle back like other German battleships. It is vulnerable to torpedo attacks due to the only being 23% torpedo belt. So you kind of want to make sure that since you're so fast and once you're spotted by ID, kind of be aware that you are most likely going to be getting torped. So the ship does have 12 305 guns with a 26.5 reload. They do have an 18.5 kilometer range with a battleship dispersion. These are the same guns as the Odin, notably better pen compared to the Scharnhorst. The AP pen is also very similar to Alaska, surprisingly. So if you ever played that, you can compare it to that. It's in the middle between the battleship and a CA pen, pretty much. It does have a 21 millimeter overmatch for her AP. Will overmatch most tier 7 and below cruiser bows and sterns, CAs like the US CAs like the York. All DDs and all DDs, of course, sorry. It does have poor firing arcs. It can only shoot 40% off the bow and 42%, 40 degrees off the bow and 42 degrees off the stern. That's why I'd recommend the Rudder Shift mod. It makes it where you're able to rudder shift better to be able to swing your bow left and right to be able to shoot your main guns all the time. Now, the ship does have pretty poor range compared to other battleships. That's why you want to use a spotter plane and not the fighter. So the spotter plane does mitigate for that. Now, the secondary guns, like I was saying, are a 7.6 kilometer base with 11.5 kilometer max range. Pretty much the same as the Tirpitz and Bismarck. That's why I was recommending that when you do build this ship, like, yes, the ship does have about the same secondaries as them, but you definitely do not, because this ship, even though it's tanky and it's able to tank pretty well, when you're trying to show that broadside to do a lot of shots, you will eat a lot of pens. So it's definitely not worth it to try to be close secondary wise, because if you try getting close, you're just going to get eaten alive. Now, this ship does have 2 quad torpedoes, 4 per side, but since this is the Tirpitz hull, they're only 6 kilometers with a 13.7k alpha. The torps do go 64 knots, which are pretty nice. So when you're firing these torps, they do go 30 degrees off the bow, 150 degrees off the stern. So they're pretty nice torpedo angles when you're cutting away, or if you're trying to just do a suicide run in, you can kind of do a nice little torp run while you're going in. Of course, these torpedoes are mainly used for yellowing against other battleships if you feel the need to, want to launch some torpedoes at somebody. So overall, the anti-air is slightly above the anti-air normally for tier 8 battleships. It does actually have the best anti-air among the German battleships, interestingly enough. Most of her AA is within the 3 kilometers, but it will not stop most strikes, but it will definitely make them suffer for going in. Now, this ship is vulnerable to AP dive bombers, just like every other German battleship. So you definitely want to, if you see a AP dive bombers from, say, the Hakuryu or like the Japanese carriers or the German carriers, you definitely want to dodge and make sure you're not just staying still to them. So this ship's max speed is 32.5 knots top speed, but with Brisk and the speed flag, you go about 36 to 37 knots, which is pretty nice, by the way. Pretty nice. It does have a 15.7 rudder shift, which increases using the rudder shift mod. Let me just double check the rudder shift with that. The mod does make it go to 12.6, which is very, very nice. It is one of the fastest BBs at tier 8, only slower to the French BBs. It does have an above average turn radius as well. Good rudder shift time for a BB only. Overall, very good maneuverability. Again, the ship does have a 12.6 kilometer surface concealment if you build into it, with a 9.1 air concealment. It's about average, below average concealment for a tier 8 battleship. Overall, still pretty good. Will outspot all tier 7 battleships, most tier 6, 9, and tier 10 battleships as well. Which is nice if you're trying to be a little bit more sneaky, stay dark, be able to get into a kiting position and not just get hammered the whole time. Now, this ship does have its consumables as a standard DCP with the normal 15-second immunity period. It also has the normal standard BB heals. And it does have a spotter or fighter, but I would highly recommend the spotter. Fighters are almost worthless on this thing. Would definitely not recommend using this ship with fighter at all. Now, as you can see during most of this match, I was using a lot of HE. I was getting unlucky with the fires, but usually you want to use the HE to try to start fires on the higher tier ships, and you want to use AP on the upper plates of the ship in the superstructure. As you'll see throughout, I do get consistent damage using the AP on the upper plates, but if I'm trying to shoot at the Citadel, you're not going to get many Citadel shots on this ship. These are 305s. You're not going to get that many Citadels with these guns, but you will get consistent pins as long as you aim for the upper plate and the superstructure of the higher tier battleships. On the lower tier battleships, you can kind of aim more for the Citadel if you'd if you'd like. My overall impression of this ship is that you can think of this ship as a battle cruiser version of the Tirpitz, having a very similar hull but mounting Odin's guns instead. As a result, they share a similar playstyle with the Brandenburg, having more firepower and Tirpitz having the better survivability and better penetration. Is kind of why you want to consider things as more of a battle cruiser and not as a battleship. Many of the same tips and tricks that can be given for playing German battleships can also apply for the Brandenburg. Pretty much just not using your DCP on a single fire, not revealing your broadside, just being wary of torpedo torps. Pretty much, if you want to use secondaries, you can, but I would recommend the standard BB tank build as the Odin and upcoming Zaitan, which is currently early access. The Zaitan is, well, by the time you watch this, it may not be as well. The Zaitan and Odin are better suited more for using secondaries, but this ship performs fine with a secondary build if you would like. But due to its ship eating a lot of secondaries and not all of its secondaries firing, it doesn't have the best angles for them. You'll kind of suffer when you try to move up because you're going to need a lot of pin damage as you move up. But overall, the secondaries aren't super consistent and not really a super effective build as like a normal build. But if you do want to have fun and meme around, of course, you can build in the secondaries. I would recommend if you build into secondaries, you do use pretty much the IFHE instead of the Brisk, so you get that extra 32 millimeters of pen on the 105s. And then for the skill, of course, you would do the long range secondary battery shells, and then the manual secondaries, and just take off the emergency repair, and also take off the basic survivability and put it for the long range instead. And of course, for the equipment, you would put instead of aiming systems, you would put the secondary slot there. So overall, for randoms, I would say that this ship is kind of mediocre to average. Her potential is a letdown by the small caliber of her main guns at poor HP pool. But she performs well in tier 6 to 8 matches, but will struggle heavily in tier 10s compared to other ships. In rank, she's pretty average. She's good at punishing broadside cruisers and even BBs, but it's significantly less effective against smarter opponents who angle. Now, for clan battles is a no. In this meta, her durability is way too poor to be able to be well in this meta. But if you're just trying to, so for clan battles is a no, ranked is about average to okay. Randoms, I would say that if you're just trying to have fun, meme around, if you don't have many German premiums as a battleship, I would recommend this one would be a pretty good one along with the Odin with the Tirpitz. But I'd definitely recommend this ship for randoms for sure. Like, it is a fun ship to play with your friends. You can also build into secondaries. With it being a really fast battle cruiser, you can push up onto the enemies rather quickly. So I would recommend, just for fun, for memes, if you want to, you can. But to perform the best in this ship, you would run a standard battleship build. So for this match, I did get a 1550 base XP, second on the team, which is pretty good for being I was in a tier 9 match. I did do around 100, and I did 121k, I believe. Yeah, about 120k in this match. It was very, very, very good in the end. That was a really strong match for a tier 8 battleship. 120k, 1 kill. Very strong for a tier 8 battleship. But yep, that is my review of the Brandenburg. If you guys have any questions or concerns, definitely let me know in the comments down below. But thank y'all so much again, and I will talk to y'all later.